Hello there, and you're very welcome to this week's episode of Mullooly Matters, the latest in our series on the European housing crisis, brought to you in association with Renew Europe. I'm your host, Eoghan McArdle, and this week you'll hear from 4 conversations I recently had with speakers at the Housing Unlocked Stories, Supports and Solutions event, a major housing summit organised by Ciaran Mullooly MEP and Renew Europe at Westside Community Centre in Galway, where members of the public could discover available supports for first-time buyers, retrofit and adoption grants for homeowners, learn how to navigate the buying process and avail of government supports and guidance for renters exploring their next step. Later on, you will hear my interviews with representative of a major retrofitting company, the Credit Union and Galway County Council. But firstly, for an overview on the housing market in general, I spoke to Colm O'Donnellan, Managing Director of O'Donnellan Joyce Auctioneers, one of Galway's largest auctioneering groups. With over 40 years in the industry, O'Donnellan Joyce have expertise in almost every area of property industry and are Ireland's largest independent auction house, as well as offering the full spectrum of property valuations, letting and management services and consulting. They have worked with some of the best-known developers in the country over the years, including O'Malley Construction, Birkway Homes and Renaissance Property. To begin our conversation, I asked Colm O'Donnellan to provide a brief overview on the state of the housing industry in Galway as it stands.
Well, the market, first of all, is extremely vibrant, and the biggest problem at the moment is the shortage of new homes. Last year we sold about 300 new homes in Galway, but let's say the capacity is just not there. Right? It is very vibrant. It is insatiable the amount of people looking for homes, and that's the problem, is the shortage throughout the entire city.
And this is both in renting and in buying.
Both in renting. The renting market is actually worse than the buying is easier nearly, believe it or not, which is hard to say. The rental market is in real short supply here in Galway City.
Mm-hmm. And what is it? Is it the price of a home? Is it the
supply? It's not, it's the availability, and that's the biggest issue. Right? There's been a very lack of development in Galway City, right? Very lack of new homes going on over the last few years. It is catching up slowly, but surely.
And the infrastructure.
The infrastructure, and that's the problem. That is the biggest issue. Zoned land, which doesn't have the infrastructure, can't be developed upon, and these are the problems.
Okay. And I'd be interested in knowing, as Galway, that's your expertise, how does this compare to the rest of Ireland? Well, obviously, we know there are massive problems in Dublin. Is it the same in similar sized cities to Galway?
I think one of the problems with Galway is its success. Galway is the jewel in the crown. Everyone wants to come to Galway, whether it's for a weekend or just want a piece of it. They may want a second house. They want a house in Galway. Yeah. And that's the problem, right? And then the younger people who are looking for homes, right, they're basically being broken out of the market. They've been, because there's money coming into Galway all the time. The people who want to live in Galway, they want a second house in Galway. There's a lot of that going on at the moment, right? And that's the biggest issue. There's a shortage of supply, particularly of new homes.
And you were mentioning there, is there a glimmer of hope?
There is. There definitely is a glimmer of hope. Where we came from last year, I think there was about 300 new homes sold. I think next year, right, I think you're going to see a large number of new developments come to the market. We at O'Donnellan Joyce will have about 3 or 4 big developments coming on the market next year. So there will be a bit more options.
And more options, that's what we want to hear. Yeah. Thank you very much, Colm, for your time.
Lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you.
Thank you.
And many thanks to Colm O'Donnellan, Managing Director of O'Donnellan Joyce Auctioneers, for sharing his extensive knowledge of today's housing market with us. Next, with extensive experience in sustainable development, building energy performance and project management, Barry McCarron is the Managing Director of KORE Retrofit, Ireland's leading one-stop shop provider of sustainable retrofit solutions designed for homeowners carrying out multiple energy upgrades. KORE Retrofit's service guides homeowners from the initial energy assessment to contractor quotes, with the company overseeing quality and project management throughout. I began by asking Barry to tell me more about KORE Retrofit's work in providing energy upgrades to Irish homes.
Yeah, we're one of these very famous one-stop shops in Ireland. We're the first ever of the one-stop shops that was set up here in Ireland. And we deliver retrofits to people nationwide. So if they come to us and they have a contractor or they need a contractor, we're the people that will help them out. We'll help them out with all the measures as well, hence the name one-stop shop.
And you were mentioning there in your speech earlier on, how many retrofits have you done in the past year?
So we're up on 600. this year. So in the can't afford market and the private market, between both of them, 6.5.
And what new areas are you going into as a one-stop shop, as I said?
So EU regulation is changing a lot of the building regulations going forward. We're looking for even more energy efficiency in homes, and we're responding to that. So with that, we're moving into things like the passive house standard, which is a high performance standard for construction, and also in that space as well, more environmentally conscious construction. And with that, we're going to look into that as well in 2026 and make announcements around new standards in that regard for retrofit.
And the EU funded projects are there.
Indeed, yeah. Thanks for mentioning that as well. We do have an EU funded project, which sure two at the moment, which shows how progressive we are as a company and as a one-stop shop. And they are really exploring the supply chains and looking at Irish agricultural waste streams and products and seeing how they can be utilised and turned into commercial installations for the agricultural sector.
So it is a bright future, I suppose. We have heard a lot of negativity today about the state of housing in Ireland. Retrofitting does seem to be a success story, I suppose, to an extent.
Yes. So I'll finish on this with you. I am a very much glass half full and rather than doom and gloom. And at the moment in Ireland, if you're able to avail of the vacant and the derelict and through a one-stop shop, you get an overall package of just short of €107,000. That in earnings is over €210,000 in earnings. That's really, really good. And on top of that, you're allowed to get a low interest loan at 3% up to 75,000. So overall, all those packages together are very attractive for anybody wanting to, really get into a vacant derelict house and not go down the new build route.
They are indeed. Barry McCarron, thank you very much. And a very warm thank you to Barry McCarron, Managing Director of KORE Retrofit, for filling us all in on the vast opportunities available thanks to retrofitting and adapting housing to fit our modern requirements. Next up, for an insight into how Ireland's great and long-standing system of credit unions can help those wanting to get their first foot on the property ladder, I spoke to Louise Shields, the CEO of Claddagh Credit Union, the largest credit union in the Galway area. So Louise, first of all, I want to ask you about the availability of mortgages from the credit union. I wasn't even aware that you could get a mortgage from the credit union. I was aware, of course, of supports for cars, for home modifications, but you can't get. How long has that been in place now?
A couple of years, but there was a game changer this September. There was a change in regulation allowing us to issue up to 30% of total assets for Claddagh Credit Union. That means we now have up to 70 million available in the Galway area for people to purchase homes.
What other supports are available? If I was to come into credit union interested in buying a property, renting a property perhaps, what other supports are there if I don't know anything?
Don't know anything. Well, in the credit union, our tagline is digital when you want it. So the normal that you would expect, the app, the website is all there, but human when you need it. And we're all human. There are times when you need it. So we still answer the phone. There are still people at the front counter. If you come in with questions, we're there to serve the members. That's the difference between us and the banks. Our primary raison d'etre is we're a cooperative. So it's not about profit, it's about service. So whatever service you want, if we can, we will give it. So we will talk you through it. We will explain how to get mortgage ready. We will keep your savings with us, and we hope that we'll be there the day you get the keys.
And do you need to have savings in the credit union?
No, you don't have to. You can come in and open an account. The only restriction is you have to live or work in our area. So that's the basis of the cooperative. But if you're mortgage ready, you can come in the same way you can come into any institution. We lend up to 500,000. You would need a 10% deposit.
And in comparison with banks or other institutions out there, why would you recommend people to come to the credit union to consider a mortgage with the credit union?
We'll be here for the long term. We're of the people and for the people. And I think this is a little philosophical, but during Storm Owen and the Ukraine war, we saw how important it is that we control our infrastructure. Credit unions are primarily financial services infrastructure. The members own the credit union. There's an AGM in January. The members control the credit union. So by working with the credit union, having your current account, your mortgage, your loan, your savings, you are maintaining control of your financial services infrastructure. We saw during the financial crisis, a lot of people had come in during the boom and a lot exited. We're now left with 3 banks, but there are still 19 credit unions.
And to conclude, apart from mortgages, what are the other trends we're seeing in the credit union at the moment? Is it smaller loans to cover the bills on a month-to-month basis? Is it
It-
larger?
It's not. There's more money in the system. So the small loans are actually declining.
Mhm.
It's car loans is a big one because people are commuting, particularly for education. We've actually included the car as part of our education loan now. 'Cause people in Galway, they couldn't find accommodation. So they're travelling from Gerard, from Mayo, from Roscommon. So as part of your education loan now, can include your car loan.
Thank you very much, Louise Shields.
Thank you.
With her insights into how Ireland's credit unions can help future home buyers access the housing market, that was Louise Shields, CEO of Claddagh Credit Union. Moving on, did you know that each of Ireland's local housing authorities has a Vacant Homes Officer that will provide advice and assistance in order to help bring vacant homes back into use? Michelle Connellan is the Vacant Homes Officer of Galway County Council and came to our Housing Unlocked event hosted by Ciaran Mullooly MEP and Renew Europe to inform those in attendance of government supports available for turning vacant and derelict properties into livable and sustainable homes. In her intervention, Michelle spoke widely about the Vacant Property Conversion Grant, and so I began our conversation by asking her more about this support to transform unoccupied housing in Ireland. Thanks very much for joining me today. Michelle, I just want to start off, you mentioned in your speech there about the Vacant Property Conversion Grant. I'm curious, could you just in a nutshell walk me through this?
So the Vacant Property Refurbishment Grant is for refurbishing existing dwellings that are vacant. The properties need to be vacant for a minimum of 2 years. So they should be vacant up to including the date that you apply. There is maybe a bit of discretion there now, in line with the department guidance that's come recently, where we can look at if people are in a situation where they own a vacant property and they don't have the luxury of having somewhere else to go when they need to move in, and they've moved in maybe a few weeks before the application has come into us. We could try to look at that and to help them to get the grant. But the property has to be built up to and including 2007, so it has to be substantially completed by the end of 2007, and that means up to wall plate level. You either need to live in it yourself as your principal private residence, or you need to rent out privately for 10 years. So you can apply for one grant for a property you're going to live in yourself, and you can apply for one grant for a property that you're going to rent out for 10 years, and it has to be annual tenancy with the Residential Tenancies Board. So it's not for short-term lets, it's not for Airbnbs or anything like that. There's 10 categories of works, and the most you can get in terms of refurbishment is 50,000 maximum. And there's maximums within each category. So, for example, kitchen units, 7,700 is the maximum that you can get. You need to provide quotations to us in your application form, and then an inspection will be arranged upon receiving a fully complete application with all the additional documents like proof of vacancy, the proof of ownership. Now, you can apply when you don't yet own the property, but you have to at least be able to provide something from a solicitor to show that you are in the process of transferring the property to yourself. And by the time you draw down the grant, it does have to be in your full ownership to actually be allowed to get the money to draw down the grant. You can get what's called a derelict top-up of 20,000, which is if the property is structurally unsound and dangerous, you provide a structural report from the likes of a chartered engineer or architect or building surveyor with the professional indemnity insurance. And they would, in their report, explain how the property is structurally unsound and dangerous and list the remedial works that are going to happen to make that property safe and to be able to bring it back into use. There's also 20% addition to that for properties on the islands. So in the case of Galway County, it's the 3 Iron Islands in Inishbofin. So you can actually get 60,000 for refurbishment here in those islands, or you can get up to 84,000 by the structural report. But just a big thing, I suppose, for people to know is that there is a charge registered onto the folio for 10 years. So it's similar to the burden in terms of a mortgage. There is a burden put on that folio for 10 years. So through, in our case, Galway County Council solicitors and the applicant solicitors, they would work together then in relation to the charge document to allow for the folio to have the charge placed on the folio. And then say for the first 5 years, if you sell property, you would have to pay back the full amount of the grant that you got. And if you sell it between 5 and 10 years after getting the grant, you have to pay back 75% of the grant that you got. And I suppose an important thing to notice that this grant can be used in conjunction with other grants like the SKAI grants. And to give an example, like air to water, for example, if you were to get that funding through the SKAI, you cannot get a portion of that through ourselves. You have to decide which to apply for. So you decide what you're going to apply for. I suppose just the main points again, it has to be vacant for 2 years. The property has to be constructed before 2008 up to and including 2007. You must own the home. There's 10 categories of works that you're eligible for in terms of this grant funding. Can use it with other grants like SEAI. You must reside in the property or rent it out, like I said, for 10 years. And the payment is going to be after all the works are done. So you have to submit your final invoices. A final inspection needs to take place. All of that actually needs to happen. So you need to be in a financial position to be able to fund the works yourself, either through your own finances or a mortgage or a loan from the credit union, etc. So you do have to be in a position where you can finance the works and get them done to a point that the property can be safe. So when we say safe, we look for functioning kitchen, functioning bathroom, and everything doesn't have to be done, but we do say that the property has to be safe in order for the grant to be drawn down. Now, 31 local authorities are operating with the same guidance for the department. However, we may have discretion in how we administer the scheme. So we administer the scheme how we see fit, and other local authorities may have their own rules or certain guidelines that might not be the exact same as us, but we are all working under the same department guidelines.
I think anybody listening to that now knows a lot more about the vacant property conversion grant than they did before.
Hope so.
Yeah, perfect.
And I suppose just to finish, I just wanted to say, I suppose you mentioned to me earlier the vacancy rate and what it's like at the moment. And obviously there's a lot of vacancy, there's a lot of dereliction still. But this vacant property refurbishment grant is going quite a long way. Like we've had 654 applications so far, 196 of those so far this year, and we've paid out 103 grants. So we've paid out over 5 million so far, and it's growing. And then we've also approved 438, which is to a value over 25 million. So I suppose it's a support to, of course, there's still a lot of vacant and derelict properties, but this grant is helping them try to start to tackle the vacancy issue.
So there is a glimmer of hope.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Michelle. Thank you. With plenty of practical information on government supports available for those wishing to enter the housing market or to retrofit for the future, many thanks to Michelle Connellan, the Vacant Homes Officer at Galway County Council. And indeed, many thanks again to my other guests for today, Colm O'Donnellan, Barry McCarron and Louise Shields, for their valuable insights as well. Thank you very much for listening to this episode of Mullooly Matters, brought to you from Housing Unlocked, Stories, Supports and Solutions. Ciaran Mullooly's housing event held recently in Galway, brought to you in association with Renew Europe. Be sure to never miss an episode of Mullooly Matters by hitting subscribe to our podcast. Until the next time, goodbye.